Journalists accused of terrorism in Turkey. Today, the trial of 17 reporters and executives from the newspaper Cumhuriyet started in Istanbul. Cumhuriyet is the last remaining newspaper critical of the Turkish government. It has labeled the post-coup crackdown in the country a witch hunt. Protesters against the trial demonstrated outside the court today. Each of the 17 defendants faces up to 43 years in prison. The trial is focusing attention on the increasingly authoritarian government of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. His critics say he has clamped down on Turkey's media and muzzled free speech, making Turkey world leader in the number of jailed journalists. Well, I'm joined tonight by Ilhan Tahir. He joins me from Washington. He is a former Washington correspondent for the newspaper Cumhuriyet. Ilhan, it's good to see you again. We appreciate you taking the time to be on the day. I mean, tell us, do you know exactly the charges that are being brought against you?
Yes, there's an indictment, and there are about 10 pages of on me. Like other journalists, I am accused of my stories in 2015, 2016. There are about a dozen stories and also some interviews I gave to some Kurdish news agency. And they're accusing me that by these stories, for example, some of them I use unnamed U.S. officials. So by this, according to indictment, I created a perception or manipulation to undermine the Turkish government. And these are the accusations, news stories also leveled against the other journalists being tried today in Istanbul.
Okay, and I want us to be clear on this, Ilhan. The stories that you wrote, the stories that the Turkish government finds to be, pushing terrorism, these were normal stories written that had voices in them that were maybe critical of the Erdogan government, but that's it, right? Or was there more to it?
No, exactly. I mean, the stories in 2015 and 2016 involved with, ISIS in Syria. So I interviewed the officials. I wrote stories about the situation in Syria and Turkey and Turkish government policies. And these are the stories accusing me that I purposely tried to undermine the Turkish government. These are the kind of stories also other journalists faces. They have nothing to do with journalism. One more sentence. I mean, I may end up seeing a couple days later this interview I am giving to you as another evidence that I am trying to undermine the Turkish government.
Well, I mean, is that a possibility, Ilhan, that the Turkish government could tomorrow use this interview as evidence against you to say that you are subverting the government of Erdogan by talking to me?
Actually, this is exactly what I am accused of. I gave an interview to a Kurdish news agency, which U.S. officials and Western officials have been talking. Its name ARA. It is ARA. These are the Kurdish news agency, and I gave them some. I don't even remember what was it. And this is cited as evidence that by giving interview to this outlet and criticizing Turkish government policies, I help PKK terror organization.
Now, you are one of the 17 defendants in this case. Do you consider yourself one of the lucky ones because you're in the United States? I mean, you can't go back to Turkey, can you?
Unfortunately, I cannot right now. And as we all know, about a year ago, there was a coup attempt and Turkey being ruled by state of emergency rules. There are very vast, the prosecutors and the police have really unconditional authorities, so they can basically arrest anyone. But on my specific case, yes, if you call it, yes, I am lucky one. I live in the U.S. for over a decade. but since I am living here, I am not being arrested, but others have been arrested for about 10 months. And today is the first time they brought them to the court after 10 months of imprisonment.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. 10 months being detained, and now finally the charges are being read against them. Let me ask you, Ilhan, the fact that you're in the United States, you're in Washington, D.C., the cleric, the Turkish cleric, Fethullah Gulen, lives nearby, and we know that Gulen is arch enemy number one for Turkish President Erdogan. Have you been accused of being part of the Gulenist movement against Mr. Erdogan?
I am accused of the member of the Gülen movement, as the Turkish government calls it, FETÖ. I've been here since 2000. I never visited Pennsylvania, where Fethullah Gülen lives, whereas many of the Turkish officials from the governing party visited them. President Erdogan himself, in his latest 2013, was inviting Ms. Gülen to Turkey and had a lot of praises for them. All of the Turkish government officials basically had relations. I never had invited, I never been taken to any kind of Gülen movement organization. I never been paid to. Whenever I go to their organization in Washington, D.C. and around Washington, D.C. With my own budget. But I end up being accused of the Gülen movement, a member of the Gülen movement.
Yeah. All right, we're going to have to wrap it up there. Correspondent Ilhan Tahir in Washington, a former Washington correspondent for the Turkish newspaper Cumhuriyet. Ilhan, thank you very much. We appreciate your time tonight on The Day.
Thank you.